Like many of you, I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing New Horizons. It's pretty much the only thing I've been playing. I play it every morning when I wake up, and I play it every night before I go to bed. But there's one game that's been able to fully pull my attention away from Animal Crossing. One that's more than 10 years in the making, and one I've been waiting for a little over 5 years now. That game is Final Fantasy VII Remake. So come along with me as I talk about my experience playing, tell a few stories from my time with the game, and give an honest review. Did it live up to my expectations, or is it just another overhyped Square Enix flop? Also, just as a heads up, this video is going to contain spoilers for the original Final Fantasy VII and the new remake. If I'm about to spoil something from the original, this symbol will appear on the screen. And if I'm going to spoil something from the new one, this symbol will appear on the screen. When I was a child, maybe 16 or 17, so I guess not technically a child, my friend and I spent an entire summer playing Final Fantasy VII. It's a long game. But what really stood out to me while I was playing it was how consistently fun it was. Some JRPGs that are on the longer side tend to have small peaks and huge valleys, but Final Fantasy VII is one giant peak. Story, combat, characters, setting, music, maybe not the graphics. Everything we criticize video games for nowadays is executed near perfectly in this game. Which begs the question, why? So, for those of you unfamiliar with the Final Fantasy series will probably notice that this game is the 7th one. So, it'd be safe to assume that Final Fantasy 1 through 6 have already been remade, and it's the 7th game's turn. But that simply isn't the case. From the perspective of game mechanics and theming, Final Fantasy 1 through 5 were basically the same game, looking from the outside in. 6 changed up the theming, but the overall gameplay was nearly unchanged. And then, the Final Fantasy series switched over from the Super Nintendo to the PlayStation 1. Being able to do so much more than they could on the Super Nintendo, Squaresoft went all out with Final Fantasy VII, and it quickly became the best Final Fantasy game. For a lot of people. And for others, their first Final Fantasy game. Needless to say, Final Fantasy VII is more beloved than any other Final Fantasy game. Whether it's the best one or not is of course opinionated and up for debate. I don't personally think it's the best Final Fantasy game of them all, but there's no arguing that it's the most beloved. E3 2015 was weird. The Last Guardian was re-announced, Mass Effect Andromeda, Horizon Zero Dawn, For Honor, Dark Souls 3, Nier Automata, and an incredibly slow year for Nintendo. The breakout press conference was Sony's hands down. They opened with Last Guardian, announced an incredibly small and very suspect Shenmue 3 Kickstarter, and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Nothing really was shown, just an announcement that it'll be a thing soon. And then we waited for 5 long years, which were mostly filled with radio silence. Which brings us to... PAX East 2020 had one of the first public playable demos. Influencers like Jesse Cox got to play like an 8-hour version, but the version I played was about 20 minutes long. It was the first boss fight, and it was a great showcase of the new combat system, but I wanted more. Which is exactly what I got a week later with a completely public hour-long demo. I loved every second of it and played it 4 times all the way through. It's safe to say I was thoroughly excited for this game. Oh, I'm playing Animal Crossing. I'm gonna get the game in like a month, so meet you there. So the elephant in the room is the length of this game. It'll set you back a good 40 to 50 hours, but it in itself is only representative of about a sixth of the original Final Fantasy VII. Keep that in mind as I go over the story. So, Chapter 1 is the first hour of the game and is also the demo I played 4 times, so I sort of found myself nodding off while playing it, but that's my fault, not the game's. No one told me to play the demo 4 times. But in my defense, no one said I couldn't. Chapter 2 hits like a ton of bricks. Your goal in Chapter 1 is to blow up the reactor, but there shouldn't have been this much fallout. Entire city blocks are destroyed, and you have to walk through it all to escape to home base, and it's all your fault. Or at least that's what they make you feel. I wanted to highlight this moment in Chapter 2. It's the moment after you meet Aerith for the first time. So far, the music in Chapter 2 has been pretty atmospheric, and the music in Chapter 1 was basically the same track the whole time, and is also the music I've been playing since the last title card appeared. But it's this moment that the developers chose to reintroduce the main battle theme.
Nice meeting you!
Sword on the ground! Right now!
Chapter 3 introduces Tifa, and I never quite understood this part. So Tifa hasn't seen Cloud in 5 years because he left to become a soldier. But Avalanche, the organization she's a part of, hired Cloud for a mission, and they completed the mission with him, but Tifa wasn't on the mission, but still has yet to see Cloud. So I guess he met up with them on the train ride over, but then that means that they hired him without meeting him first, and then he returns to their home base with them as if it's his home base, and then he stays around for a couple more days. He probably sticks around to spend time with Tifa rather than the reason he gives, which is still waiting for my money. I don't know, the whole situation was always a little weird to me, but I digress. Chapter 4 contains content completely not included in the original Final Fantasy VII and focuses on Jessie. More on her later. The next couple chapters happen pretty much the same. You go on a mission with Tifa and Barret to shut off the artificial sun lamps, fight a giant robot thing, Cloud falls down, meets Aerith, fights Reno, fights Rude, meets Aerith's mom, tries to get back to Sector 7, finds Tifa en route to Don Corneo's mansion, and you both follow her, bringing us to Wall Market. Between 1997 and 2020, Wall Market has transformed from a couple of shops here and there with a few things to pass the time into a bustling Las Vegas-esque strip with a ton of side quests. Occasionally, the game shifts from being linear to being a mini open world area with various side quests. This happened once during Mission 3, once during Mission 6, and right now during Mission 8 and Wall Market. Wall Market is so much fun. On top of the primary objective, which is going around looking for 3 people to get approval from so you can enter Don Corneo's mansion and save Tifa, you can fight in an arena, compete in a squat competition, and do various other missable side quests. I wanted to focus in on one aspect of Wall Market, however, and that's the Honeybee Inn.
It oh so sweet here at the Honeybee Inn. Every moment is a treat.
Early on in the night, Aerith realizes that in order to gain access to Don Corneo's mansion, she has to get quote-unquote dolled up and look nice for him. But it doesn't stop there. Why should Aerith be the only one to subject herself to this? Cloud is just as capable of putting on a dress and showing up to the mansion himself, which is exactly what happens. This part was in the original, and in the original, it really wasn't handled all too well, but when they chose to adapt it for this game and for the modern era, they did so with an unprecedented amount of care. Every time I watch the Honeybee Inn sequence, it brings a tear to my eye. Aerith's voice actress, Brianna White, said basically what I was going to say, except way better and much more eloquently than I ever could, so I think I'll just let her take it.
I just have to say, I have to take a moment here to say something that I love about what they did with this scene, because cross-dressing and playing with gender has been used for comedic effect for a really, really, really long time. Now, notions of gender being a spectrum have not been around for as long as far as I know, and being accepting of people proclaiming their truth and being who they really are meant to be. But the fact that they took it a direction that is affirming and safe and right for everyone, in saying that beauty, doesn't it's not limited to notions of gender. To say that beauty as an expression, as an art form, is so the right way to handle it. And I can imagine watching this scene and being told to be unafraid, and the way that they had the words, you were born for this, the idea that the way you were born is perfection in itself, and that your role here, just by virtue of the fact that you were born, is to shine your most beautiful. The fact that that message is in a major AAA title is so beautiful and so important.
So you rescue Tifa, find out that Shinra, the government, is going to drop the Sector 7 plate, killing everybody who lives there, which is like 50,000 people, and then you're trapped in the sewers. When you wake up, you're given a choice, Tifa or Aerith. But doesn't it feel like something's missing? So there's a love triangle in Final Fantasy VII. There always has been. It's pretty entertaining and probably one of the most compelling parts of the first half of the story of the original Final Fantasy VII. And seeing how this game is only about the first sixth of the original, it was definitely going to show up in this game. There's Cloud Strife, an admittedly moody edgelord who's rather good looking but has a few screws loose. His childhood friend Tifa, who recently came back in contact with him after a 5-year period of joining and ultimately leaving the military. It's not actually the military, but I don't feel like explaining it, so let's just call it the military. Tifa is very headstrong, but also clearly still has feelings for Cloud, just like she did when they were children. Tifa, overjoyed with Cloud's return, quickly attempts to indoctrinate him into her way of living, and it kind of works, until a mission they're both on goes sour and Cloud falls all the way down into an abandoned church into a bed of flowers tended by Aerith, the third point of our triangle. Aerith's backstory is complicated, so I'm not going to get into it. Basically, the government is after her, always kidnapping her and experimenting on her. But Cloud knows none of this when he first meets her. She's just a simple, down-to-Gaia flower peddler who has a penchant for helping people and doing the right thing. And she's not tough to look at either. It's also unclear if she actually has feelings for Cloud or not, at least at first. So it's at this point that you as Cloud have a choice. Do I pick Tifa, my beautiful childhood friend who clearly still likes me, or this new girl I just met who's equally as beautiful and might be coming on to me? I think if it was up to Cloud, he'd pick neither, but he's not in control of his actions, I am. So there's an obvious choice for very spoiler-heavy reasons that I won't get into, but coming from the perspective of someone who's never played this game before and has never experienced this story, it's really a toss-up. They're both great choices. There have been other love triangle-y things in other Final Fantasy games, and those all seem to have their own individual clear winner, but none are as contentious as the debate between Tifa and Aerith. Who do you choose? They're both great for their own respective reasons. Though, here's where the Final Fantasy VII Remake complicates things. Enter Jessie. Now I hear you asking, who's Jessie? Well, I think the best way to explain her is to do exactly that. In the original Final Fantasy VII, Jessie and her two friends, Biggs and Wedge, are minor characters. Yes, they're a Star Wars reference. There's a Biggs and Wedge in every Final Fantasy game after 6. Moving on. They're part of a rebel team known as Avalanche, a group of eco-terrorists. They have maybe 5 or 6 lines each and die very unceremoniously in the later half of the first act. They're never really talked about again. From a storytelling perspective, they're necessary casualties of war. But in this game, they're actual characters with fleshed out backstories and teeming with personality. So let's say that you've never played the original. Let's say you picked up Final Fantasy VII Remake because it looked fun and you wanted something to play that week, but never got a chance to play the original. PSA, don't actually do this. So the game starts out and the first character you see is Aerith, but you don't know that yet. You're then introduced to Cloud, the character you play as, and then you're introduced to Barrett. Barrett is the leader of Avalanche. He's a planet-loving extremist who's huge and has a gun for an arm, and he's cool. Sometimes you try to explain Barrett Wallace and he doesn't sound cool, but you gotta trust me when I say he's really cool. Then you're introduced to Biggs, Wedge, and...
Have fun. Just bear with him for me, would you? Just keep those baby blues of yours on me. Swing by my place after, so I can pay you in full.
Ooh. Is it hot in here? Oh man. Jessie is awesome in this game, and what's more important for the subject of this video, she's flirty. She actually flirts with Cloud, and she lays it on pretty thick. She's clearly very interested in him, which is more than I can say about Tifa and Aerith, one of which is only implied and one of which I honestly can't get a read on. There's one point in the game where she actually invites Cloud to spend the night with her, and this happens.
Oh. Okay, I get it. Mind letting me breathe?
Depends. Mind coming over tomorrow night? My roommates should all be out for a while.
Are you seriously that desperate? Just let go already.
Only if you promise to come back tomorrow night. Deal?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Now, The obvious reason this happens is because of the aforementioned death of Jesse, which, if everything goes according to plan, should and does happen around the end of the second half of this game. This complicates the love triangle, not only turning it into a love four-sided triangle, but I feel like it shifts the quote-unquote obvious choice I mentioned earlier. Now the question becomes, do I pick Tifa, my beautiful childhood friend who clearly still likes me, this new girl I just met who's equally as beautiful and might be coming on to me, or do I pick Jessie, a woman with a backstory just as tragic as everyone else, who's really cute and bubbly and is someone who wants it? Seriously, she lays it on thicker than... So, I guess my question is, why? Why make Jessie so likable? Was it supposed to make me more sad when she dies? Because it worked. Now I'm at a point mentally where every time I do something with Tifa, Aerith, or both, I feel jealous that I wasn't doing it with Jessie, the choice I actually wanted to pick. It's like Monica all over again. And another thing, why does Jessie still have to die? You clearly like her character enough to flesh it out this much, and you changed so much from the original Final Fantasy VII. Why not make it so she doesn't die? Wedge doesn't die. Biggs doesn't die. So you clearly have no qualms with changing the fate of these supplementary Avalanche members, each of which I could honestly spend their own separate video talking about because they're all so compelling. So I guess what I'm saying is, Jessie, you're incredible. If I could have picked you, I would. Sorry you still had to die. Our time spent together was short but fun, and I'm sorry I didn't respect you enough to give a shit the last time around. Now, there truly is only one obvious choice. So long story short, the plate drops, most of the main characters are fine, except Jessie. Aerith gets kidnapped and brought to Shinra HQ, but not before saving Barrett's daughter. Now, the mission becomes save Aerith, an endeavor that moments ago Barrett wouldn't have cared about, but in his eyes, Aerith's kidnapping is indicative of his daughter being alive. So, the stage is set for the third act of the game, which becomes a non-stop onslaught of combat. You infiltrate the Shinra building, locate Aerith, find this weird dog, find out that the mayor's part of Avalanche, finally figure out how to properly utilize Barrett in combat, kill the president, fight the president's son and his weird dog, and you escape from the city, which brings us to... When everyone said that the end of this game was buck wild, they were not joking. Here's my thoughts. So there's a character I haven't mentioned yet, and his name is Sephiroth. Sephiroth is the main villain of Final Fantasy VII, and for all intents and purposes, should not appear in this game. But he does, rather frequently. Cloud is constantly haunted by visions of Sephiroth throughout the entire game. And then, at the end of the game, Sephiroth himself shows up. He's the person who killed the president. Something else that shouldn't be in this game but shows up constantly are these ghosts. These ghosts meddle with the events of the game, but they meddle wherever they want, in the affairs of protagonists and antagonists. It's not until the end of the game that it's revealed what they are, and they're basically plot ghosts. Every time an event is about to stray from how it happened in the original Final Fantasy VII, they intrude. The characters aren't supposed to be able to see them, but for whatever reason, they can. And at the end of the game, you destroy them, which is the developers' cheeky way of saying, hey, the next game might be a little different from how you remember. Once I figured out what was going on, I was very intrigued. Even more so when Zack showed up. Now I hear you asking, who's Zack? Zack is a character that only appears in flashbacks in the original Final Fantasy VII. To make a super long story very short, and to not give away too many spoilers, Zack and Cloud were friends in Soldier, Zack died saving Cloud's life, this is Zack's sword. Zack should not be alive. He is not meant to survive this encounter. But he does. This opens up a fleet of dozens of possibilities for the next installment of this game. Are we going to get to hang out with Zack? Are we going to get to play as Zack? And in the grander scope of things, what else will be changed? Maybe Sephiroth won't be the final boss. Maybe Aerith will get to live. Maybe Ketchi will be pronounced Kate Sith. There's really no telling, and that is what truly excites me the most about the next installment. This game is exceptionally fun. This game is outright addictive. Remember when I mentioned that traditional JRPGs have huge valleys and short peaks? This entire game feels like one big, noteworthy peak on the action RPG genre in its entirety. That is, unless you play the game on hard mode. So, as I'm sure you know, most video games have a harder difficulty, and what most video games would do is just that. ramp up the difficulty. Maybe harder enemies with more attack and health, maybe more enemies, maybe limited or no autosaving, but Final Fantasy VII Remake seems to think that hard mode works like this. We're going to take away your ability to use items entirely, whether you're in battle or not. And we're going to make it so that benches only fill HP and not MP. The only way to heal MP is by beating a chapter, of which there are 18. A number that goes from sounding like quite a lot to sounding like none at all when it's observed under the guise of this is how many times you can restore your MP. Simply put, it's not fun. I gave it a good, honest try, I promise. I got a little more than halfway through the game, and I just had to call it quits. I've seen people online talking about how they think hard mode in this game wasn't that bad, so maybe it's just me, but currently I really just feel like I put a lot of time into getting way better at a game than I wanted to, only to not finish it and feel like I wasted a lot of time. The music in this game is great. Not only are most of the tracks remade versions of the original, but they managed to be atmospheric and nostalgic. Here's a couple of my favorites.
Stand up and cast your fears aside. Stand up and fill your soul with pride. Rolling around at the speed of sound.
Voice acting in video games is important nowadays, and the voice acting on display in this game is terrific. I don't have time to talk about them all, so I wanted to highlight 4 real quick. Tyler Hoechlin, probably best known for his work on the CW, where he played Derek in Teen Wolf and Superman in Supergirl, but not a voice actor, absolutely killed it as Sephiroth. Sephiroth's voice needs to be soft-spoken and harsh at the same time, making you feel as though this person is mentally stable but could snap at any moment, but maintaining the notion that this character is definitely evil. Erica Lindbeck, voice of so many characters. Cassie Cage from Mortal Kombat 11, Futaba Sakura from Persona 5, Barbie,
Hi, you're my best friend. My name's Barbie.
and Black Cat from the new Spider-Man game, to name a few. And you can add Jessie Raspberry to the list. This new version of Jessie is bubbly and compassionate, and Erica does a great job as always. Also, probably part of the reason I like Jessie so much. John Eric Bentley. It's clear that Square Enix wanted to give Barrett Wallace a bit of a character overhaul, making him much more sympathetic early on, while also making him way more vocal about loving the planet as equally as he does his daughter. And John Eric Bentley captured this in spades in his performance. This character is both aggressive and compassionate at the same time, and you need to be incredibly talented in order to pull that off. And I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to talk once more about Brianna White. When I was a child and I played Kingdom Hearts 1 for the first time, and I heard Mandy Moore's performance as Aerith, I thought to myself, this is what Aerith's voice should sound like. This is what Aerith's voice should always sound like. And I thought that right up until the moment I heard Brianna White speak as Aerith. Where Mandy Moore was breathy and soft-spoken, Brianna White is a lot more confident and upbeat. It really rings true to Aerith's character, especially when she's teasing Cloud. Also, she's awesome and I love her.
What?
The emotion that these voice actors are able to convey in their individual performances are incredible and honestly the best part of the game. Show up because it's Final Fantasy VII Remake, get hooked by the super fun gameplay, stay for the voice acting performances. So here we are. There's not much more for me to say other than this game gets a 9 out of 10. It honestly would have got a 10 out of 10, but I just can't forgive that hard mode, I'm sorry. But that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sticking with us during what I've been calling the quarantine arc. Lightning will be back on the channel full-time soon, I promise. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you like the video, please make sure to give it a like, comment, share it with all your friends, subscribe if you haven't. We have way more videos than this. We have Let's Plays, we have podcasts, we have video essays. the big videos, the big overproduced video essay-like videos always come out on Sunday. So make sure you subscribe to stay updated on that. I've been Thunder. You've been watching Thunder and Lightning. Stay safe, stay clean, and we'll see you next time.